rats. I always hear these rats scratching in the roof when I try to sleep. It keeps me awake some nights, but other nights I sleep through it, blissfully unaware that they continue to rake their little claws across the roof all night long. I share a room with my twin sister, and she can never sleep through it. She often wakes me up, standing over my bed and whispering tiredly, "They're doing it again, Kayla. The rats are scratching again." I don't really know why she's always woke me up though. I mean, we were only 12 years old, and it's not like I could go out and buy a rat trap or climb into the attic myself and catch them with my bare hands. So we would walk down the dark corridor in a straight line towards my parents' bedroom and wake up my dad. He always knew what to do. He would put us back to sleep and tell us that the next day he would buy some new kind of trap to kill the furry bastards with. Don't get me wrong, I hate cruelty to animals. I think it's probably one of the worst crimes imaginable, and I'd do anything to protect one. But when you've been kept up night after night after night with those diseased vermin scurrying their way through your roof, looking for God knows what up there, you would do anything to get rid of them. And when I say being kept up for night after night, I mean months. The rats in the roof had been there ever since my sister and I had turned 12. The first time they made their existence known to us was the night we turned 12. Their little tapping claws scouring the roof, their beady eyes looking for food in the darkness, their diseased bodies pushing over one another to find anything edible. We wanted them gone, and my dad knew what had to be done. This time he bought these extra strength rat baits, guaranteed to kill a rat with one nibble of the navy blue rectangle of poison. He climbed through to the attic and into the roof, where he lay the little death squares all around the place. Climbing back down through the manhole, he turned to us and rubbed his hands together. "Now, we just have to wait. They'll be gone soon." And he walked past us and out of the laundry. That night we didn't hear a thing for quite some time. "Dad did it," I whispered to my sister. "He got them." Though I still wasn't entirely sure. Looking back at that now, I think that I said that more to reassure myself than to comfort her. Although, as the night progressed, we began to hear the noises again, and I knew the rats hadn't fallen for the bait. We would have to consult our dad again in the morning. I always thought it was strange how we never heard them during the day. Maybe that was due to the fact that it was quieter at night and easier to hear them, or they never came out during the day. Whichever it was, I didn't care at the time. I just wanted them dead, and nothing was working. God knows how many different traps and different kinds of bait we stuck up in the roof. I bet anyone else who poked their heads into the attic would think it was a secret stash of poisons belonging to a serial killer. But we were just desperate to get rid of them, and they seemed desperate not to leave. Dad had eventually had enough, as understandably anyone would. My mum had begun to grow tired of his money wasting on all of the different products he had bought trying to get rid of them. She suggested that he climb into the roof and find out where they were coming from and if any at all had died. So, drawing near to the end of his tether, he climbed up into the attic with a torch. "You're going to have to go all the way down to our bedroom because that's the only place they ever scratch," my sister said, as his legs disappeared into the thick blackness above. We could hear him thumping and crawling his way along the roof, all the way down the hallway. "Have you seen any dead rats yet, Dad?" I called, hoping the darkness hadn't swallowed him entirely and drowning him and the sound of the outside world. Luckily, it hadn't. "Not yet. It's weird. There isn't any evidence proving that there were ever rats up here. It's really strange." He trailed off mid-sentence, and I thought it would be best to let him concentrate. After a few minutes of thumping around in the roof, he crawled back out through the attic. No dead rats or traps or anything, except for an old, torn and bloodied t-shirt. "What's that?" I asked. "I just found it. I've got no idea who it belongs to. Probably been accidentally thrown up there during a party or something," he said as he threw it into a nearby bin. "That's not the only weird thing either. All of the traps are gone," he said, a serious look overcoming his face. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked him. "I don't really know. They've just vanished," my dad replied, a dumbfounded look upon his face. "I have to talk with your mother now, girls. Leave us alone for a bit." And he pushed past us and walked towards his bedroom. That night at the dinner table, Mum and Dad talked to us about a proposal they had in order to catch whatever animal was in the roof. It had to be intelligent to have gotten rid of the traps and bait. Dad thought it may have been a possum, but the only way to get rid of it was to make sure of what it was. "We're going to place a camera in the roof and see what starts making those scratching noises. If we know what it is, we have a better chance of capturing it, okay?" Mum said to us. I couldn't fault their logic. It seemed like a good plan. Up the camera went into the swirling darkness. Dad placed it in the stretch along where our bedroom was located, seeing as that's where most of the activity happened. He had put a SIM card in the camera with 12 hours of recording time on it. Dad put the camera up there at 8 PM and we would retrieve it at 8 AM. Then it was just a waiting game. I heard the scratching noises all the way through the night as usual. They started at exactly 9:24. I know because I checked the time so I would know when to fast forward the camera to in the morning. A pungent odour had also made itself known ever since Dad had found that t-shirt. It smelled like raw sewage and my nostrils were always burning when I woke up. But considering we had no idea what we were up against, Dad couldn't do much about it. I couldn't really get a wink of sleep because I knew that the next day we were going to discover what the animal was and get rid of it. So I just lay awake all night long thinking of the blissful days of sleep that lay ahead of me. At a little past 8 in the morning, my dad woke me up and handed me the camera. "Watch this and tell me what animal it is," he said, turning to walk back out of my bedroom. "Where are you going then?" I asked him, stopping him in his tracks. The bait and traps mysteriously reappeared. "I'm going to get a box to collect them and then head up there. Funny thing is, they're right over your bedroom," he said, giving me spirit fingers and exclaiming, "Woo! Spooky." Then he laughed and exited my room. I shook my head and fast forwarded the footage on the camera to the exact time I heard the scratching. After a few minutes of fast forwarding, the camera read 9:20 p.m. I figured I would rewind it to the point where the animal actually came into the roof, so I might be able to recognise it better. 1 minute passed, 2, 2.5. I watched the screen intently to capture any kind of movement whatsoever, and then finally it made its emergence. Something that was curled in the fetal position at the far side of the corner began to move. Its spine was visible in the dim light, protruding through its pale yellow skin, almost the colour of milk. Its long and bony arms stretched outwards, its skinny and impossibly long legs stretching downward. Its limbs seemed too long for its body. Cramped muscles from lying in the same position for hours and hours finally got relief. Its body was spotted with blood and a bloody rag on around its legs. Whatever it was disgusting. But the scariest part was when it turned towards the camera. Pure black eyes, the colour of coal, stared straight into the camera. It opened its mouth in some kind of putrid grin, yellowing diseased teeth peeking out from its mouth, desperate to escape. It was at the point that I knew it was a human. It crawled up to the camera, its bones visible through the thin yellow membrane, acting as its skin. Its pure black eyes stared into the camera. Then it touched the lens, and I could almost feel its brown, rotting fingernails against my face. Then it turned from the camera, spit starting to draw from its mouth, and it crawled over to the spot just above me and my sister's bed. Then its face turned towards the camera unnaturally, and it began to scratch, staring at the camera the entire time. No, staring through the camera and directly at me. I couldn't watch it any longer. I fast forwarded the footage as fast as it could go, and it never blinked or looked away from the camera. For the entire 10 hours it scratched at the roof. Then it stopped, placed the rat traps that had disappeared the day before in front of the camera, then turned away and returned to the fetal position it had come from. It tucked its impossibly long and skinny limbs into its body and curled into the fetal position. It hadn't left, and now Dad was up there. My heart jolted in my chest and fear overwhelmed every inch of my body. I heard a scream from above. Spider, love bite. Maxine was beautiful, lovely, smart, fair, two-faced, a backstabber, a cheat, a liar, a whore and a user. Whatever she wanted, she got immediately. She had an overwhelming, overbearing and oversized ego and was proud of it. One of her favourite victims to torture was a freshman called Agnes May Altman. It was considered normal behaviour for juniors and seniors to torture fresh meat, as they called them. Agnes was not the loveliest of lovelies, but her inner beauty held all the treasures a soul could ever want, and her virginal beauty emitted a sort of presence about her. Maxine, despite her beauty, was jealous of that because it was considered laughable, even to the popular folk, to call Maxine a virgin, considering her reputation with cheating with her best friend's boyfriend. If it weren't for Maxine, she would be treated humanely. But since Maxine was so popular, Agnes would never be free from her severe acts of verbal sadism. Poor Agnes was walking down the hall one day when Maxine pulled a strand of her hair out of her scalp. Agnes cried in pain, and when the hall monitor asked what had happened, Agnes never revealed what Maxine had done to her. As a new school year rolls into place, Agnes is now a sophomore, and Maxine is a senior, but that doesn't stop Maxine from torturing Agnes. But Agnes had changed physically over the summer. She was now 16 and had a curvier body, fuller cheeks, and her long dull hair shined with radiance. Without meaning to, her beauty was beginning to surpass Maxine. Since this was going to be Maxine's last year in high school, she wasn't going to have any of that. She was going to run for prom queen this year and wasn't going to be sullied by a mere sophomore. So later that day she waited in the hall where Agnes usually passed to go to her next class. As soon as Agnes turns into the hallway, Maxine sets her foot out and trips Agnes. She falls and her face hits the floor. Agnes screamed in pain and Maxine laughed in return. She wanted to ruin Agnes and had succeeded. But Agnes wasn't thinking of that, but anger towards Maxine burned in her eyes. Agnes was such a sight. Maxine shrinks back with fear at the way Agnes stares at her. You'll get yours, Maxine Evans. You will get yours. May the heavens and the deep abysmal pits of hell be the witness of that today. I hope everyone will see the ugliness and the wickedness of what you truly are inside. You may hide it behind that pretty face of yours, but it won't last forever. Curse you, Maxine. I hope your undeserved beauty withers and dies, so that the rotting carcass that you really are will be exposed for all to see. With that, Agnes turns on her heel and walks into the ladies' room. Maxine shrugs and smiles at what she did to Agnes. Freak, Maxine whispers to herself. Later that night, while she is asleep, a tiny spider crawls up to the apple of her cheek and sits there. It stays there for many hours until Maxine brushes it off in her sleep. The next morning in the mirror, she sees a little red pimple on her cheek. She is outraged and puts a little astringent on it so that it wouldn't spread. Her day at school was fine, but when she got home, the little red spot had darkened to a deep blood red. Later that night, she washed her face twice and put more astringent on it, and then went to bed. The next morning she woke to find that the spot was getting bigger. This time her friends had really noticed, and this concerned Maxine. Agnes, in the other hand, was lucky. All she had was a bruised nose and a split lip. But people were beginning to talk to her. Maxine was beginning to wonder. Later that night, she went to her mother and asked her if it would have been wise to pop the pimple to get it over with, but her mother advised her against it, saying that it was too risky and that popping a pimple could cause bruising of the skin and scarring. So to bed she went. As time went on, Agnes had healed and her beauty was restored. All of Maxine's friends began to talk to her, but despite it all, Maxine was still herself. She still never tried to impress anybody, and her pimple was now the size of a thumb imprint. No one would talk to Maxine because of it, and also because they feared that it could blow at any time. Maxine was miserable and now suspicious of Agnes. Through it all, Maxine never changed and continued to call Agnes names whenever she saw her in the hallway, but Agnes acted as if she didn't hear or see her. Maxine felt as if she were a has-been. She couldn't cope with that and began to lose her patience. She runs to the girls' bathroom and screams at the mirror when she sees the oversized zit on her face. What did I do to deserve this? I did nothing. Nothing. Maxine screamed so loud that the pimple burst. At first she was relieved, but then she noticed little creatures crawling out of her pus and skin. They were tiny baby spiders, thousands of them crawling all over her face. She bats them away from her face and a group of the girls walked in on her. They saw her face and screamed, then ran out of the bathroom. Just then, she sees 2 feet in the bathroom stall. Agnes makes her way out of the stall and sees Maxine's face. There's no sign of fear etched anywhere on her face. I told you that you were going to get yours, Maxine. I just never thought it would be that bad. Agnes smiles and says, "Oh, and before I forget, that's just the first batch of them." The infestation. They have invaded. It started out small, like most catastrophes. I was exploring my new house, checking out various rooms and noting where I could put down some furniture. As I was walking through the empty house, I saw a small insect crawling across the floor. I stepped on it and thought nothing else of it. A few days later, I was putting my stuff away in my new room when I saw some bugs crawling around on my dresser. I remembered the time I stepped on the bug a few days ago and thought that there might be a lot of bugs in the neighborhood. It was nothing serious. I just needed to make sure doors were closed so things don't get in too much. Again, without thinking much of it, I squashed the bugs and went about my business. Things escalated quickly from there. These bugs started popping up all over the house. I made it a daily routine to go room to room, killing various insects. I called in an exterminator multiple times, and multiple times he said he removed a small colony of the little bastards. The problem just got worse and worse. I eventually got a team of expert exterminators to do a complete sweep of my house, cleaning out every nook and cranny. They said they must have killed over 3,000 of the bugs. Everything was fine for a few days after that, until I found one of the little shits on my windowsill. They seemed to multiply every day, and I couldn't get rid of them. It didn't stop there. Neighbours started complaining about the bugs and called more exterminators to try and help. I decided that I wanted no part of this and promptly moved out to a place further north. I had thought these things liked it down in the warm, humid south, so I wouldn't find them up north. For a while, I was right. About a week after I moved, I saw a news story about how a major crisis had risen in the town my old house was in. Bugs were everywhere. Grocery stores closed because of the bugs being found in the food. Medical stores closed when bugs started contaminating medication. Some buildings were actually quarantined because of the absolutely massive number of bugs living in them. The worst one. My old one. It's been 2 months. 6 continents have been consumed by this plague of bugs. The people who stayed died from various diseases or from the anarchy that began because of these damn bugs. There are barely 100 million humans left. Anywhere these bugs go, they breed and breed and breed. Scientists estimate that one of these bugs has an average of 10,000 offspring in its 6-week life cycle. When new ones are born, they are capable of breeding in 4 to 9 minutes, depending on the environment. They can survive anywhere from 140 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. They will never be stopped. Wait a second. What's that black thing on my desk? Oh shit. Beneath the floorboards. The conversation with my house sitter grabbed my attention as soon as I answered the phone. The dog died under the house. I let it sink in. Yeah, she's wedged between 2 joists. We can't pull her out. Try harder, you idiots, I thought to myself, furious. 3 days ago, I'd been informed by the house sitter that they had heard barking coming from under the floorboards, but obviously they never did anything about it. Another wave of anger washed over me. I let them have it for letting my dog bake to death in a crawl space during yet another hottest summer on record. and tell them I'm on my way with a couple of friends who volunteered to help. My childhood pet, dead. My vacation, cut short. When I got home and stepped out of the car, the smell immediately hit me. Nowhere was safe from it. I headed to my backyard, to the entrance of the open crawl space. It never had a covering of any kind. Safe, right? Hindsight is 2020. I found myself playing the blame game, yet somehow I was in the hot seat. But then again, who hasn't blamed themselves in the heat of the moment for a personal tragedy? She's way towards the back, my house sitter says. One of my friends pokes his head into the crawl space and shines his phone light around for a second, and then emerges disheartened. Yeah, he's right. She's behind a pipe and He hesitates, choking on what he has to say next. She's too bloated for this to be a quick or clean job. Those words stuck in my heart like an arrow. It seemed otherworldly. Nothing like this had ever even crossed my mind before. After some time and discussion of solutions, we initially decided on a rope that ended up being impossible without making excessive physical contact with my dog's body. Eventually we realised the bloat was the largest factor in adding difficulty to the removal, and one friend hesitantly recommends puncturing the corpse to relieve the pressure. All the other ideas were for naught. So in the end it was decided that was best. The friend who made the suggestion volunteers for the task. We found a 6 or 7 foot pole, a steak knife and some duct tape, thus rigging a crude spear. After a second and some mental warm-ups, he ties a t-shirt around his nose and mouth, then enters the crawl space. We waited. He was under there for maybe 2 minutes before he scrambled back out, gasping for air. I was able to puncture the body, but the knife broke off and got stuck. Disgusting. Maybe we can't. We all grew silent and cold when we heard a tap from the crawl space. Focused on the entrance, we stood gingerly at first. We saw a twisted snout appear from the shadow of the crawl space, then eye sockets teeming with maggots, and eventually out trotted my dog, her fur still attached, maggots dripping from her body like water after a bath, dragging her wet entrails across the dust of my yard, the knife in her ribs bobbing loosely in its seat among her flesh. Girl in Blue, posted by Ella Carr, 1988. Let me preface this story with this. While I was an imaginative child at the time of this story, I knew at the age of 6 the difference between imaginary and reality. I had imaginary friends growing up as an only child, but I knew they were just that, imaginary. When I was 6 years old, my mother and I lived in this house that was much bigger than the two of us needed. We called it the big house, and still call it that to this day when talking about our time there. It was a 3-story house. The first floor was comprised of the kitchen, dining room, and living room. The second floor was 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, and the third floor was just one large room. That was my room. It doubled as a bedroom and a playroom because of its size. My room had 2 little cubby doors. One opened to a small storage space. The other, my mum could never get to open. It had a small oval knob and a keyhole, like one of those keyholes that were meant for one of those skeleton keys. This is relevant later. I was not only an only child, but I also had no neighbourhood kids to play with, no cousins or family friends. I blame this fact on why I'm still socially awkward, but I digress. Up until this particularly sunny day, there had not been any unusual activity in the big house. I'm now 33, and yet the memory of this day is still so clear. I had just got my first ceramic tea set. The set was a creamy white with a delicate pink flower, hand painted on each piece of the set, even the tiny spoons. I had gathered my 2 favourite childhood toys, a rag doll named Rattle and a bear with a clown hat named Stuffy. I had snuck down to the bathroom and filled the teapot with water, and I was fixing to have my first official tea party. I sat in front of the window where the sunbeams landed on the floor. It was full, and the spot where the sunbeam hit was always the warmest. I'd been playing with Snuffy and Rattle for about 10 minutes when I realised, while looking down at the tea set, across from me were a pair of light blue shoes. It happened gradually. It's not like they popped into existence. It's more like when you're looking somewhere else, so your brain just doesn't register what you're looking at right away. Like that. As I looked up, I saw a girl. She was about my age, with copper hair and a knee-length blue dress, with lace around the neck and hemline. She had brown eyes and a smattering of freckles over her nose. She wore a silver locket around her neck and the blue shoes I had first seen. For some reason, I wasn't scared. I just asked if she wanted to have some tea. She just nodded and sat in front of me. It's only years later that I fully realised she made absolutely no noise doing so. I don't know how long we played. She never spoke, just nod or shake her head. The only noise she made was a peal of laughter. It was after this laughter that I heard my mother open the door. At the foot of my stairs, she called, "What are you doing up there? I can hear you squealing all the way down in the kitchen." When my mother had opened the door, I had jumped and looked over my shoulder towards the door. When I turned back to look at the girl, she was gone. Her teacup still full. Snuffy had fallen over, but nothing else had moved. "Just playing my tea set, Mama." I called down the stairs, still staring at the empty space in front of me. Again, I was more confused than scared. That is, until I heard a squeaking hinge coming from behind me. I whipped around, looking for the sound, and there it was, the door to the cubby that I had watched my mother trying for hours to open was open. It was open just an inch. That's it, an inch. I sat where I was for what felt like an hour just staring. Part of me was waiting for a monster to come out of it. It felt weird. My little mind couldn't figure out what had happened. I debated yelling for my mom. Thought maybe just cry. Finally, I gathered the courage to slowly walk towards the little cubby door. Inside was a very tiny space, maybe 3 foot by 3 foot and 4 foot high. There were some old newspapers and debris from years of being untouched. Then I saw a small ring on the floor, not one knew where, like an old door knocker. I pulled it. As it opened, I heard something slide across the hatch. Once the hatch was opened, I looked down into the little door. I was looking down into my bathroom linen closet. I laughed. Even at 6, I realised I had been spooked by a cubby that just had a secret door to the bathroom. As I was looking down, I heard my mother come into the bathroom. So I waited for her to pass the closet and I yelled, "Boo!" I swear, she almost fainted. She opened the closet and startled, "You little..." But she trailed off. From above, I watched her, looking all around the lower shelves of the closet, which made me giggle. She looked up in surprise, which caused me to slam my little hatch closed. As it closed, I saw what had slid off the hatch. It was a silver locket. Moments after I had closed the hatch, my mum was running up the stairs, yelling my name. She asked me how I opened it, so I told her what I just told all of you. I remember the dumbfounded look she had at the end as I held up the silver locket, slightly tarnished and covered in dust. After that weird stuff happened all the time in the house. We would wake up in the morning with every kitchen cabinet open, the water turned on, far away sounding giggles, the washer starting with no one near it. Nothing that bothered my mom, strangely. I kept the necklace until I lost it in 5th grade. I never saw the girl again. I had seen one other apparition, ghost, spirit, or whatever you want to call them, in our basement, the same month we moved. My mother and I lived in this house alone. Keep that in mind. I wanted to blow bubbles, and the giant jug of bubbles was kept on the basement stairs. When I went to get it, and when I bent down to grab them, I could see our washer and dryer. Standing in front of them was a tall, balding man with black hair, a half-unbuttoned plaid shirt, and what appeared to me was black dress pants. When I saw him, he looked directly at me, and then was gone. I have a few more weird stories from the big house. Maybe I'll share them later. Until then, have a good spooky season, everyone. Something's wrong. Posted by Dependent Ad 87493. Hey John. What? Come check this thing out. Ben, I don't fucking have time for this. Ta-da! A portal? Yeah. Lame. Oh, come on. Just let me... Oh, great, Ben. You got us into some random reality. Sorry. Whatever. Let your stupid portal device charge so we can get out of here sooner. Okay. Someone's in a bad mood. Shut up. I'm in some random reality, but some ocean, so gazing and beautiful. Hello? Is someone there? Flesh. New flesh. What the fuck? I heard fucking screaming. Actual fucking screaming. Where is he? Have you been he? I'm gonna stop hanging you. I need to make a break for it. You in here. Ben, help, he got me. Ben. John? His camera's here. Why? He's gonna be with you soon. How do you turn this thing off? I have an idea. Mirror image. Elaine had just finished cleaning up the table after a leisurely breakfast when her daughter, Martha, came screeching into the kitchen. "Mummy, Mummy," she cried. "Yes, love?" "There are handprints in your bathroom mirror." "Then wipe them off, pet. Mirrors still work even if they're dirty." She said this last part with a chuckle to herself. She had expected much larger issues than routine washroom upkeep from a darling little fuss budget. But after Martha's father walked out on them a year ago, apparently Elaine had become a totally different person than the big-bosomed bird he'd married a decade prior. She fixated on the smallest things to distract herself. It seemed like Elaine's days were filled with a never-ending onslaught of requests from her little princess. She wouldn't have it any other way though. "No, Mummy, you aren't listening to me. They aren't on the mirror, they're in it. It's like they're on the other side. I saw something in there." "Oh darling, it's just an old, dirty mirror." This statement was met with what can only be described as the Martha. She just shut down completely. Elaine could tell that she wasn't going to make any headway until she resolved the issue. "Fine. I will go check out the bathroom mirror, but there's nothing to worry about." To be quite honest, Elaine didn't really want to go and check out the bathroom. Lately it just felt off in there, and she would never tell Martha this. But that old mirror gave Elaine the willies. She could never place her finger on it, but it just gave her a bad feeling in the pit of her stomach, like a storm about to hit. Elaine entered the room, cleaning products in tow, expecting to find some very Martha-shaped handprints smudging the mirror. To her surprise, there were none. The only thing she saw was a tiny hairline fracture running down the centre of the mirror that came from nowhere and seemed to be rapidly expanding as of late. A flash of something danced across the mirror in the centre of the fracture. It was the light in the bathroom. Surely. That has to be it. She gave the mirror a parting wipe when the flash happened again. Longer this time. It wasn't just the light that time. She knew it. What in the world was she seeing? She started to pick at the crack when she heard a loud crash and crying coming from the kitchen. What in the world happened in here? You okay? Yes. I fell down and hit my head, cried Martha between the childlike gasps of the truly terrified. There, Elaine cooed. She got Martha calm and told her to take it easy for a bit and go and lie down, to which the child begrudgingly agreed, but only on one condition. Elaine had to sing, playing with Martha's hair until she finally slept. Her mother sang, "Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you miss me. While I'm alone and blue as can be, dream a little dream of me." Elaine couldn't stop thinking about the mirror and the flashes she had seen. How long ago had that been? An hour? It felt like more. She checked the time on the wall clock, only to discover that the clock was dead. Hadn't she replaced the battery this morning? She couldn't even remember hearing it tick or chime today. Shoddy craftsmanship. That was what was really to blame. Come to think of it, she hadn't heard the phone ring all day either. She ran over and picked up the receiver, only to be greeted by no dial tone. She rang the rotary to 0 to attempt to reach the operator, the only sound being the rotary clicks and silence on the other end. This town should at least notify its citizens before working on the lines. She paid bills just like everyone else. This was ridiculous. She needed to stop getting so distracted and look at that mirror again. Assured that Martha was resting soundly, once again to the mirror she went. It looked as odd as ever, but the fracture seemed to have gotten wider and longer since she had been there last. How was this possible? She felt the groove in the crack and felt a jerk in the pit of her stomach, like someone had tugged a fishing hook placed just behind her navel, and the entire room seemed to flicker. Elaine was nauseous and just plain terrified, and she scrambled towards the locked door as another flicker happened and a face became visible in the mirror. That stopped her dead in her tracks. It was her. She reached out to touch the image that she couldn't believe was real. "Mummy!" came a scream from behind the door. "Don't touch that. Come play with me instead." The tone of her daughter's voice made her leave the door locked. There was something wrong. Something she didn't recognize. Something bad. The next flicker widened the crack in the mirror, and she saw herself again. She was in a bed that was not her own, and in a house that wasn't hers. She was screaming. She rose to touch the mirror again. "Mummy, no! Stay here with me. Play games with me. Don't leave me. You can live here and play forever. Mummy, won't that be such fun? Please stay with me. Mummy." That was not Martha out there. She didn't know much right now, but that fact was certain. That voice was not her daughter's either. Something began hitting the bathroom door with such force that it wouldn't last long on its hinges. Much longer. She steeled herself for what she knew she had to do. "Smash! You don't understand. Smash! You need to stay. Crack! You'll regret this." She had no idea what would lie beyond the mirror, but it had to be better than whatever monster lay behind the rapidly weakening door. She plunged her whole fist into the crack into the mirror, and everything around her seemed to shimmer before going totally black. She's usually much calmer, but with today being the anniversary, she acted up a bit and busted her hand punching through the mirror in her bathroom. It was a mess and a half, but at least she's alert enough to feed herself. Why does she keep asking where a Martha is? Asked the newest of the nurses to the head nurse. Is that a sister? Daughter, quiet, tragic story. Elaine's poor dear, a workaholic since the husband left, came home one day from work to find her house broken into. She starts yelling for her daughter and can't find her anywhere. She tore the house apart looking, Finally, she looks in the downstairs bathroom and finds her in pieces in the tub. They apparently tortured the poor little baby for hours before it was all said and done. Apparently, it was a big bloody mess. Bathroom mirror smashed all over the place, so she could see the scene 1,000 times at once. Found one of the bigger shards covered in her bloody little handprints. Well, she'd had enough of her wits about her to call the police, but by the time they got there, she had the poor baby's head in her lap, stroking its hair and singing it to sleep. They sent her here after that. Sometimes she's lucid enough to tell me about it. Don't guess she can move on. They never found the one who did it, but Elaine has sung the same story all the years she's been here and hasn't changed a single note. Said she thought she saw someone run out of the house that night after she got inside. Said it sounded crazy, but it looked like her Martha. Said it looked so much like her that it was just like looking in a mirror. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thanks for listening. If you like scary stories, then don't forget to like the video and subscribe, as this really does help the channel. And don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. If you have any scary stories that you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.